I think Cassin is a very good Thresh, but not as good as Healy, of course.
A hard glance from Hillasang, steal back with the damage, and the Ren picks up the kill.
Kasim is a really good Thresh player. He is aggressive. He knows where to be on the map.
Manages to stay alive. He's gone back in. And the lantern. Wow, another kill for Hyun and a Vitality.
What he showed on Thresh was that he just has one certain style of how he plays this champion.
Godfrey should escape. Hilly takes half of his health bar and damage.
People like leave open Thresh so that they want him to pick it, just because they know how to play against it.
Kassin winds up and he finds Solas. Hyun flashes for first blood.
Just in the 2v2, I don't think it will be super much problem.
Come back.
Welcome to the LCS studio in Berlin, Germany, where week 4 is in full swing as you get a look at H2K. We're just doing some meetup with the fans before the games, and there are the co-leaders of the board, G2, who are going up against Splice in our very first game of the day. There, the huddle with Yamato Cannon, and of course the place here is absolutely packed for our second day of games. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am EpicSkillshot supporter here on the analyst desk with an all-support duo lane, Mitch Kreppel-Voorspoels and Martin the Fisio Lunge.
Worst duo lane ever.
Yeah, can somebody dodge, please? Can we get this guy out of here?
Nah.
I'm actually a pretty good AD carry now.
I'm actually not a pretty good support right now.
So I'm going to be the carry.
Yeah, together you guys can carry some games, we'll see. But before we start everything, we are excited to announce that we'll be hitting the road for the 2016 EU LCS Spring Finals. This year's first and third place matches will be held at the Ahoy in Rotterdam, Netherlands, on April 16th and 17th. For more information on how to score tickets and to join us live in Holland will be available soon, so keep an eye out on lolesports.com.
Hup, Holland.
Hup! Hoorah! Hey! But before we start thinking about the finals, we have to look back at our second day of games right at week 4 and look at the top of the tables. G2 still reigning supreme together with H2K, and then the Unicorns of Love and Vitality right behind them. At the bottom of the tables, unfortunately, Roccat and Giants. Now, my question for you guys, G2 and H2K, what are they doing so well, and what do the teams just below them need to do to get into that spot?
I think if we look at G2 and H2K, I look a lot at the pick and ban phase. I think both teams have really figured out how to pick in this current meta. Don't go pure team fighting, have like strong matchups, strong laners where you can 1-3-1 very often and just apply pressure on side lanes. Especially H2K will do this in almost every single game. People are saying it's a little bit boring to watch, but that's the effective way to play the game at the moment.
I mean, both these teams just understand how to play towards their strengths, and they don't play the same carbon copy style either. Like, G2 is still a considerably different team compared to H2K, and they just win it in different manners. Sure, they both played poke-comps at one point, but G2 has the more aggressive approach sometimes, sometimes a little bit too much, too many dives forward. But it's fun to see that at least two slightly different styles can be at the top here over in Europe.
And then again, we have the teams who have figured out how to play right now. We also have a lot of star players, honestly, on these lineups. Even for G2, even though they're a fairly new team, like Perks has come in and become one of the best mid laners instantly. We highlight Emperor Hybrid in the bottom lane. Often Trick is doing well. So there's a lot of good players on these teams, combined with the fact they've figured out how to play the meta. That makes you a top team. Yeah,
the only drawback we could criticize G2 on, and obviously if a team is performing as well as G2, we have to start thinking more about the shot calling, like where does it become too repetitive, where do they insist too much on making a certain play and they don't actually go for the plan B overall. That's kind of where I have some questions for G2.
We'll talk more about that in the match intro in just a bit. Something else I wanted to touch on is the meta. Yesterday, first game in the EU LCS on 6.2. Cabochard pulled out the Lucian top lane overall. We also saw some Tahm Kench more as well. So what is your general impression?
I'll leave the Tahm Kench to the Fisio, but I just love the top lane Lucian especially because how smart it was used. The CDR Yomu's build where you basically go for multiple E usages, dash in a very long lane. He also upgraded an early distortions because he works on both teleport and flash, and he made it work so well, and then he chased with the Cullen, and it was a very smart pick. And from talking to some other teams, we're not going to name who, they also had issues with the Lucian top in scrims overall, so the cheese does really work.
It's all the mind games, right? You see Lucian getting locked in, you expect it to be AD carry, and then everything gets swapped around. He gets a good matchup top, and he can be a bully against a lot of things. Tahm Kench can honestly be the same up in top lane against all the tank champions, where we see him very often do extremely well. And also the fact we saw Kasing play him as support because he didn't really get affected as a support with the nerfs coming. So he's still going to be super, super strong. And he just denies so many things because of his Devour.
Overall, still so many flex picks, which makes the picks and bans very, very interesting. And we'll have to see how things develop today as we start things off with a clash between G2 and Splice. Then Elements will face H2K, and we'll see the Tide Unicorns of Love and Vitality settle things on stage. And that Unicorns of Love Vitality match looks great.
Yeah, every other match looks very one-sided, just on paper. I mean, we have the 4 top teams and then the 4 bottom teams, honestly, in this one. I mean, we need to start seeing more upsets. It's weird, we're in Europe, we normally see everyone beating everyone, but it's not been the case lately, where we seem to get more consistent performances from every single top team.
Well, we'll see how that match plays out, but now before we take a closer look at G2 versus Splice, we're going to check in with Trevor Quickshot Henry for a look at the Keystone Masteries that are dominating pro play.
Thank you very much, Sharks. I do want to talk about some of the masteries, but I do not want to talk about Thunderlords because everybody has felt the slap of Raiden in the face. Instead, I'm going to focus on 4 different ones, starting with Fervor of Battle, Grasp of the Undying, Windspeaker's Blessing, and Storm Raider's Surge. Now, I'm going to answer a few key questions. What is the Keystone Mastery? What value does it give you as a player? And who should you be using it on? Let's start with Fervor of Battle. It's one of the relatively easier ones to understand. This is an additional physical damage that gets applied on hit for champions that do a lot of hitting. This is a damage that will scale up to a maximum of 112 additional bonus physical damage at maximum stacks at level 18. Now put yourself in a position where you're Olaf or Lucian or Kalista and you're continually hitting people, continually dealing damage. You get an additional 112 damage per hit on every auto attack that's going to be landing. Now this is not something that does scale with the likes of Infinity Age or Critical Hit, but it's just bonus damage that is very easy to add on. I'm going to move on to the next one, Grasp of the Undying. This is now a keystone that's a little more difficult to quantify because what does it do for you? First of all, it gives you sustain in lane. Now, the way that it works, while you're in combat with another champion for 4 seconds, your next attack against them will deal 3% of your maximum health as damage, and you will heal for that amount as well. Sounds a bit overwhelming, doesn't it? But let's put things into perspective. You're a Gangplank or you're a Fiora, you're in lane. You want to farm up to 1 or 2 items to become that beast that we know you can be. So how do you stay healthy? How do you stay sustained? You continually trade, you continually poke, you get in your opponent's face. To put a number to it, if you have 1,000 hit points and you get 5 procs, that will give you a potion's worth of gold and health back. That's every 5 procs. Right, but what about if you don't want to heal yourself, you want to heal everybody else? You're a supportive player, you like to help the team out. Well, Windspeaker's Blessing is the Keystone Mastery for you. Because what this does, first of all, it's going to buff both your healing and your shields. And what it will also do in addition to that is give armor and magic resistance to your allied champions. The more champions around, the more armor and MR you're going to share. The higher the level of your teammates, the more you're going to share. Because the way it defaults is not to your lowly supports level, but to the highest level applicable. Bonus stats for everybody. It's actually quite scary when you think that if you have 4 allies around, one of them's level 18, you're giving 2,500 gold worth of armor and magic resistance to the rest of your team. So fantastic value for everybody around. If you're an Alistair, if you're a Janna, if you're a Karma, pick that up in solo queue. The last one I want to mention is going to be Storm Raider's Surge. It's a little bit more complex, and the way it works is if you deal 30% of your target's max health in damage, you will then receive 40% movement speed, and you will also gain 75% slow resist. Now, movement speed is quite a difficult concept to grasp because the more you have, the less you receive. So here's a graph of just showing you the diminishing return. It's not really what I want to focus on. What I want to focus on is just how much value you get. If you have a base move speed of 350 and you get a proc from Storm Raiders, you will actually gain an additional 1,500 gold worth of movement speed, and on top of that, the slow resistance. So put yourself in Diana's shoes, put yourself in Echo's shoes. You dive into a team fight, you use your skill rotation, you get the movement speed and the slow resist, which allows you to dodge more skill shots, to reposition, and to get to safety, to wait for another rotation of spells. One of the best examples of this was GBM over in the North American LCS. He actually used it on Zillion. He zoomed up to the fight with an E, popped 2 bombs down, got Storm Raiders, and then ran the hell away to wait for his cooldowns. Very clever use of a Keystone Mastery to give more power and utility that you can't really see. So those are the 4 that we're starting to see a little bit more on the LCS stage. I hope you guys at home don't fall into the Thunderlord's honey trap pot as often as I did, and consider picking these up for the champion you play, the team composition you're trying to put together, and maybe you can pick up a little bit more LP. So with that, I'm going to head back over to the analyst desk to break down game 1 of the day.
Thank you very much, Quick Shot. Yeah, it'll definitely keep me from going, I'll just take Thunderlords every single time and not thinking about it.
Not very effective on Alistar, sadly. Go Wind Speaker instead.
It's only good for the level 2 power spike.
And that's it.
Thank you, support crew. Anyways, later in the show, we will be joined by none other than Vitality's support, an actual good one, Kasing. So send your questions for the World's 2015 contender with the hashtag AskKasing. Remember to tweet them at LL Esports so we can bring them up on the desk later today. For now, though, it is about high time that we get into our first matchup of the day between G2 Esports and Splice. G2, leaders of the league, together with H2K yesterday versus OG. They demonstrated that they not only are able to play a Pokemon, but that they can also play against it effectively, and we've seen a lot of good things.
Yeah, just they know how to play towards their win conditions. This time they drafted just a really good answer to a Pokemon. A hard engage in the top lane, CC in the mid lane, double hard engage for the support, and then Hybrid being able to block so many spells with his shield. It's just a really well-rounded composition.
And this is the thing we always praise G2 for, is having multiple compositions they can play and also play against. And also we start seeing more and more in terms of overall macro strategy. It was our big question, you know, we started in week 1 and week 2 do really well individually. We're like, we want to see progression already. And we start seeing smarter calls from the team. They're making the right calls. Now they just need to understand that making the right call often means the other team can predict what you're doing, and you have to then have an answer for that as well.
So we saw it actually yesterday in the game. At one point, G2 tried to isolate the bot lane tier 1 tower, and they tried to rotate bot and kind of force that play, but Origin caught on, and then it's fine. They disengaged, but then they kept trying over and over again, trying to force.
3 times, I think.
3 times in total, and they forced the play instead of, you know, it seems very easy from our side. Base, you know, and try and change the area of the map that you play on, but we have to start criticizing G2 on these things because they're doing everything else so well already, so they need to start perfecting their play, whereas many other teams in the league right now, they're still building up to the level where G2 is already.
Well, and Splice is one of those teams, not a wealth of options like G2. Their only option that they have defaulted to is Senkux carrying, yes or no. If not, they don't seem to have a plan, and that starts in picks and bans.
It does start in the pick and ban phase. I think Splice wants a little bit too much in the pick and ban phase. I think they're trying too many different compositions. Nisbet, as an example, has played 6 different supports already. Bart here, as we see on your screen, was one of the new ones he picked up. I feel like when you are struggling, focus on 2 or 3 champions each. Learn to play build these compositions. This one, particularly, I didn't like it because I felt like they had very few options in how to play out the game. They couldn't really win the 2v2 lane. The 1-on-1 lane would go even just be a dead lane, and Corki does really well in mid against H2K. And if you lose laning phase, the game is over.
Yeah, we had a long discussion back and forth about this team comp already, and what it boiled down to is, yes, there are answers from Splice, but they require so many conditions to be met, and so many lanes are defined as playable, not hard counters either way. But if you go for so many lanes that are so hard to play, so many playable lanes, then maybe I think you're going a little bit too hard for Splice, and maybe make it simpler. Again, as you say, 2 core compositions, stick to the more predictable gameplay, and try and improve from there.
We'll see what they come up with, and for a look at the lineups, it will be time to check in with our casters. And as we go, Hybrid tells us how his bottom lane synergy just clicked.
When I first played with Emperor, it was like we clicked immediately, you know. Everything went good, like the scrims, like we didn't lose a single game like the first few days. Like, and the communication went well. With Trick, it's good as well. Everyone is just talking and everyone's just calm, listening to each other.